Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Tonight's special guest, Mike Lefevers, engine builder, race car driver, the first guy to drive a production body car over 300 miles an hour at Bonneville. Yeah, he went fast, and he built the engine in that thing that went fast. And as usual, we have our normal panel of hosts. Bill Fowler of Big Hat Racing. Brian Barnhill of TunerTools.com. John Bewley of Little John's Motorsport Solutions. Mark Dalquist of Throttles Performance. Scott Evans of Helix Tuning. Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development. Blake Hughes of 417 Motorsports. Scott Clark of RealTuners.com. And possibly a few of our previous guest hosts will pop their heads in and chat as well. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Now let's get this show on the road. Hey, welcome back to RealTuners Radio. Sorry we have been so busy these past couple weeks. There has been a lot of excitement in all of our lives. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring everybody in so you can say hello and we can see who's on tonight and how good we're going to have a fun time tonight. So I think we got Bewley. I think we got Mr. Clark. I know we got our special guest, Mike Lefevers. And I believe we got Mike Perduto on here. And as always, Bill Fowler as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Little vacation.
Evening, guys.
Oh, it sounds like Tom Sewell joined in.
Is that Tom?
Is that Tom?
I think that was Mike.
Nope, my bad.
I think that was Mike.
Never mind. Sewell, where are you at?
He better be cleaning some injectors.
Right?
Building somebody some injectors.
James Shaw.
I have a kind of an emergency situation here I want to speak on first. Jonathan Coleman and the crew at DBR are in Kings George, Virginia for the day 4 of Drag Week tomorrow. If anybody knows anybody around Kings George, Virginia with a welder to try and repair a cracked turbo crossover, if you could get in touch with me, Jonathan Coleman or Dan Morin on Facebook. We've got a crack on Dan's hot side on his crossover. Need to try and get that fixed this evening somewhere around Kings George, Virginia. And
yeah, some of you listeners go put that out on your Facebook.
So if you guys could put that out there that the DBR crew is in need of a welder around Kings George, Virginia, get us somebody to get them in contact with to get the repair done so they can continue on Drag Week. That would be absolutely wonderful and appreciated out of you guys.
Hey, speaking of those guys, is Joe Durard? Is he the co-pilot for Coleman?
Oh, yeah, he's
dude. Check out the hoods that guy painted.
He's the
holy
goose.
Crap.
Yeah, he's the goose to Jonathan's Maverick.
I'm gonna have to meet that guy. I've met Jonathan a few times, but I don't think I've met Joe. That is hilarious.
Oh yeah, Joe's
paint job on the hoods. That's what's getting.
Oh man.
Yeah,
like
I told him. I sent him a message. I was like, dude, a ton of magazine guys are going to be taking pictures of those. That's going to be like, backdrops. And sure enough, he sent me a picture of like people lined up taking pictures of the hoods that he had painted. Anyway, thought it was cool.
Yeah, those hoods are like absolutely ridiculous. The one that's on Coleman's car with the fade in the flake. Who fades flake? It's ridiculous. Absolutely insane. And, it was a very humbling thing to see, my company in paint on the hood of that car. So,
right.
Jonathan, Joe, man, it's, that's appreciated.
I hope they find a welder. Somebody help those guys out. Find them on Facebook. Jonathan Coleman, DBR.
Yeah. Me, Jonathan, Joe, Dan, any of the four, get in touch with us with the contact information. That way we can get those guys to a welder to get that fixed. It would be greatly appreciated this evening. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Back to my whiskey.
Wait a minute, I got to get mine out. You're starting ahead of me. That's not.
Oh, I was joking. I was making fun of you. I am drinking nothing. Glass of water.
Hey, John, could it be? Is this MIG stuff on stainless, or could it be just TIG, or could it be just MIG'd up on if it's just steel or?
Considering the fact it's day 4, if we had stainless wire in a MIG, we would probably be all right with it.
Okay,
would be all right with it. He would probably prefer a TIG, but I'm sure at this point, considering the fact where they are and what they're doing, they really wouldn't care.
Okay. I'm just trying to, if people have ideas and thoughts, they might have a different shop depending upon what process would be best to use to be welded are.
I'm pretty sure that car's got a stainless crossover on it. Jonathan didn't say for sure, but I'm sure they can make anything work. I can just
figure it out. We can come back to this, man. We can bring that up every half hour.
Yeah, we'll come back.
So, moving along, any other major announcements before we start chatting with Mike here?
Go for it.
All right. So our next guest has been, he was a hero of mine for at least the last, 20 years or whatever, just for the stuff they did on Bonneville. But then as social media came about and I started seeing some of the other photos of stuff he had done in his career, I thought, man, we need to have this guy on the podcast. So anyway, welcome, Mr. Michael Lefevers. How's it going?
Hey, very good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We can hear you loud and clear. Thanks for joining in tonight. Wow. So I mean, the most recent cool thing that you're doing, I mean, let's start with the land speed stuff real quick. I know we've been cramming it down everybody's throat this last couple of months because we like it because it's cool and unique. But right now, are you and your sons running? Is it a rear engine modified Roadster or?
It's a front engine modified.
Front engine modified. Okay. But and that's the current car. You run that both at Bonneville and El Mirage?
Yeah, we've run that car since 2008, and it was a family project. We took it on as something else, something different. Everything I'd done up at Bonneville up to that point was pretty much door cars of one sort or another, and it was just we thought, let's try this, and thought about doing a regular Roadster, and then the rules are pretty tight in the Roadster. Modified Roadster, you're a lot more liberal with the rules, and so we decided to do that. And it was an opportunity for the kids to get involved and be involved in the building process. And since you have to do a chassis, and the only thing on it is the 27T body, if you will, and everything.
Sure. Some of the tin. Yeah.
Is all custom fabricated. There's nothing store bought, on the car at all. So, we've had to learn how to do aluminum work and how to do fiberglass work and Bondo and paint and so on and so forth. So it's been a fun project. And really both the boys have done real well learning how to drive, and they're both in the 200 mile an hour club at El Mirage. And now we're focusing on trying to go fast enough at Bonneville to get them in the 200 mile an hour club.
You guys have to go really fast in a car like that to be in the quote unquote 200 mile an hour club, right? It's not just going over 200 miles an hour. How fast do you have to go?
In our class, the current record at Bonneville is 263 miles an hour.
Woo. Moving.
Mike, what kind of power is in that car? And what kind of what engine is it? What size? All that stuff.
Yeah, different combos.
The engine is a Dodge R5 out of a Busch NASCAR program. Wayne Jessel has been involved and helped us with some of the hardware when we started this project out, and so that was some engine parts that he had available, and we have since we were originally just using one of his mule motors, and that's what the kids learned to drive with a single 4-barrel on it. And then we've since modified it to the point that it now has the turbocharged engine in it with electronic fuel injection and so on.
And for people that are listening tonight that are trying to picture this, having been in gear grinders for quite a number of years now, every time someone says they're going to run a traditional roadster body car, we kind of perk up when we're out on patrol, because you start getting to the speeds you're talking about, and it seems like as not, they're going to end up going backwards at some point on the course, just because those cars want to go backwards at a certain point.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about the car. What does it look like? To paint a picture a little bit. Scott, do we have pictures up on the feed?
The car itself the body has to be a traditional 27T body. So that was bought from Unlimited Fiberglass. But it has a tonneau cover that we made for it. It has a parachute fairing around the driver's compartment and the parachute at the back. And so, for all intents and purposes, if you were to look at a mid '60s front motored top fuel dragster, that's kind of what you're looking at. That's what this is. Everything from the firewall forward is stretched. The wheelbase is 175 inches. And so it's stretched and hammered and done a bunch of stuff to do it, to make it a modified roadster as opposed to just a regular.
Do I have the right pictures up? Red with a number 701 on the outside?
Yeah, that's the car. So I'm not looking at the website, but yes, that would be our car.
Yep, that's it. Scott's got it under control.
So anyway, it was, like I said, it was a fun project. But boy, talk about doing something that I probably wouldn't want to do again. Building a car from the ground up where there's really nothing. We built the frame, the axles, the suspension, just anything and everything that's done. We had to make it all.
So that car isn't rigid.
It has suspension in the rear. It's solid in the front.
Got it. Half and half.
So, it's got coilovers in back.
And going down the salt or the dirt, depending, how much weight overall? What does the vehicle weigh?
Right now, it's about 4,000 pounds. It probably should be heavier, but we've got some compromises. One of them is my trailer. Just didn't want to. We're overloading the trailer as it is. So this year we actually put a wing on the back of the car, not because we felt we needed the aero on a downforce point, but we're looking at it as more of the feathers from a dart. The car was starting to get skatey when we get into the 250 mile an hour range. So we're trying to use this trimmed out spoiler and keep it. Help keep the car pointed in the right direction, ideally, without adding another 1,000 pounds of weight to it. So,
a question from a total salt newbie knows nothing.
No problem.
What's keeping the car straight at those speeds when you're literally riding on salt? Strictly aero?
It's aero if it can be, but most of the time, if you have aero, some sort of aero device on the car, you're actually going to go slower. So the thing is usually weight and the placement of the weight. So you have your center of gravity and your center of pressure, and you want to make sure that you keep those two in the right locations, and it can be a challenge. There's not a lot of easy ways to do it. It's more of a hit and miss a lot of times. It's not something you can calculate. With a streamliner, you can do things and calculate where center of pressure and center of gravity are. But in a modified roadster or some other types of vehicles, it can be difficult to calculate where that's at. So you can do some reasonable guesstimations, and experience, helps. But the simplest solution is usually adding weight and moving as much of it as far forward as you can.
So, Mike, you've done work with Indy cars and though open wheel, and then also you're the first guy to go 300 miles an hour in a production body car. Are there any learnings from those that crossed over, or was this all just new, undiscovered country?
I want to clear up one thing really quick. Is first off, I appreciate you mentioning that the car is the first car to go 300 miles an hour, because it is. However, I wasn't driving it when it went 300. That was Joe Kugel. I was a partner with the Kugels on that project. And it was my engine, and I was heavily involved in the project. But he went 300 in 1999 driving the car. I drove the car in 2000 in a different class. And that was more of a, let's put the engine builder in it and see if he can make an idiot of himself type. I was fortunate. It's a really good car to drive. I drove at 285 miles an hour, got in the 200 mile an hour club at 260, set the record in my class at that time. So as an engine builder and somebody who wasn't normally driving on the Salt, I was quite pleased with myself for doing that. But the fact is, the car did go 300 the year before, and we're quite proud of that achievement. In terms of how it shapes up into the Roadster, everything is a learning curve. So even with the Firebird and the background that we had there, we still have some things that we can translate into the Roadster. Weight being one of them. The power curve is a little different, but it's not as much different as a lot of people would think. The Firebird, while has a larger frontal area, it has the tires and wheels enclosed and a fairly good aero. And if you're looking at the drag coefficient and stuff, those are pretty good numbers, as opposed to a Roadster, which has the tires exposed, the front axle exposed, and some of the other things. And when you start, over the years, I've been able to compile numbers between the Roadsters that I've worked on and the cars that I've worked on. And it's interesting to note that in the 200 to 250 mile an hour range, the power requirements are real similar. And it's mainly probably due to the fact that one is a lot more draggy than the other, although the other one has a lot more frontal area than the other. So it's still an interesting comparison for me.
So I apologize for skipping around a little bit, but your career and your accomplishments cover so much ground. You mentioned that you're running a NASCAR-based engine, starting out naturally aspirated and then going to turbo. Does that level of naturally aspirated engine how do I say this? Does it turbocharge well, or does it take power adders well? Because these engines are becoming more and more available, and people are becoming aware of just how much of the science and technology has gone into the NASCAR naturally aspirated stuff, and people are going fast. There's a guy at Drag Week right now running bottom nines with a 358 cubic inch Mopar motor in a Dart, which is pretty damn impressive. And now you guys are going these amazing speeds. Do these engines, and based on your experience, they lend themselves to power adders?
In my opinion, they do. The Dodge has some disadvantages. It has an open deck block, and that to me is a negative. But we are not running this engine as hard as I'm a real conservative engine builder, and the bottom line for me is if you're going to set any records at Bonneville, you have to be able to go 5 miles twice at wide open throttle. So if you're going to build an engine that's capable of making 2,000 horsepower, you're probably not going to be able to set the record, because you won't make your second pass. So if you detune everything and run, say, 1,500 horsepower, you're more than likely going to have the parts survive, and you'll probably still set the record. And that's really kind of the trick, is to know the class that you've chosen and the power requirements potentially for that class, as opposed to just saying, how much power can I make? Because it's real easy to make big power numbers for short periods of time. But like most people realize, is at Bonneville, you have to average that speed over a mile. So 5,280 feet at full throttle without lifting, that's, if you're going 300 miles an hour, that's a mile in 12 seconds. So you're on the throttle for 12 full seconds, not to mention to accelerate up to that speed. So,
which is flying, and that's a lot of load, man. Did you spend much time on the engine dyno with the turbo combo? Did you rig up the turbo combo to run on the engine dyno?
Yeah, we did, and I have my own dyno, and before we put it in the car with the turbo on it, we had it on the dyno. Fortunately, it's my dyno, because if I would have had to pay somebody to put that on the dyno,
so much work with a turbo engine combo.
About 5 days to get everything hooked up and set up to run on my dyno, and it was a lot of work. It's not always that difficult, but that's the drama of an engine dyno. Chassis dynos are a lot simpler, and you can certainly run all the components in the car. But one of the problems you have with a Bonneville car on a chassis dyno is you don't usually have a cooling system. So without a cooling system, you can maybe only start it up, get it a little bit warm, and then make a quick pass. And then basically you're shutting it off and trying to tune with everything turned off. The engine dyno, we have the ability to do a lot more testing and transient response and things like that without worrying about the engine getting too hot.
Yeah, control all the temperatures and everything else. Yeah.
So I've run it both. I mean, I've run it on the chassis dyno. This last year, we ran it on the chassis dyno because I didn't have time to take it and put it on the engine dyno. So we just left it in the car and made a few changes to it, and then put it on the chassis dyno and got some baseline numbers and tuned and went, okay, that's good. And off we went to Bonneville.
That's impressive.
So a minute ago, you said
that's impressive.
Right.
A minute ago, you said you're on the throttle for like 12 seconds at a time, plus the time leading up to it. So you're on the throttle as long as a Honda is at the drag strip.
Well, I mean, the reality is when we push off from the starting line to the time we shut off and pull the parachute, it's about a minute and 20 seconds. So you're accelerating you have a total of 5 miles. You're timed through the last 3 miles. So you have a 2-mile acceleration, and you might be running, it depends. I'm going to use the Firebird as an example because I have good numbers from the Firebird. So we would run.
And Mike, can you tell us a little bit, tell the audience about the Firebird just a little bit, just so people can kind of put it in context?
Okay, I really probably should. The Firebird was a 1992 Pontiac Firebird. We were running it in gas coupe at the time. And the rules require gas coupe to not have any body modification. So everything that was on that car was something that was available from Pontiac, and you're not allowed to, flare fenders or put wings on it or do anything. So the car, because of that, was quite heavy. That car, we had enough weight in it that the total weight of the car was 5,200 pounds. And but that's what kept the car on the ground and going straight.
Heaviest Pontiac ever.
I mean, remember, guys, you're dealing with unusually traction-limited surfaces between the dirt at El Mirage and the salt at Bonneville. So the weights you hear about are critical for keeping a narrow tire, and I'm going to use this term loosely, hooked up to that surface. So that's all part of the science of getting these cars to be able to go that fast over the 1.3 miles at El Mirage or the mile 3 to mile 5 Bonneville piece. So
we'll say
it's
sideways. Hooked up is kind of very, very loose. We'll say not sideways.
Like I said, I'm using air quotes here for that. But yeah, go ahead, please, Mike.
No problem. It's good that you point out the reasons for this, because the weight is also a factor in that every vehicle produces lift at some point. So you've heard the term, even a brick will fly. So the Firebird, when it's in the 280 range, it is creating enough lift to come off the ground and do bad things. So those were known entities from wind tunnel data that had been gathered before us. And so we already kind of knew what the situation was. And cars that were originally in the 4,800 pound range were having problems. So we knew that we needed to be heavier. We ended up at 5,200 pounds. And it worked out for us. And again, we weren't allowed to have any aerodynamic enhancements because they're not legal in the class. The car literally still had power windows in it, and it had the hood open, the deck lid opened. It was all steel. It was a 1992 Pontiac. Most people assumed it was more of a funny car type vehicle, but it was all the original car was still there.
Do you just put weight bars in it everywhere and just start throwing lead in there to get the weight where
there's enough room to put weight bars in it like that. So literally, since the rear seat was out, there's the floor pans where if a passenger was sitting back there, his feet would be. Those floor pans were filled with lead. We melted lead into those floor pans. The rear bumper and the front bumper, those were filled with lead. There was lead in a lot of places in the sills, the door sills, everywhere we could put weight. We put weight. That it was mapped out pretty heavily as to how to get it in the car and how to keep the percentages where we wanted them. So the car ended up being 45%, 55%. So
wait, did you say 45 front and 55 rear?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Wow. I just want to say that was like 1999. I was 19, 20 years old. I just landed a job doing cylinder heads at a company, and you guys going 300 is what brought me to watch the Salt. That's what got me into watching land speed racing.
Yeah, John got all excited when we said you were going to be on tonight. He's like, "Wait, I know that name." I'm like, "Yeah, the guy with the
like you and Kugel breaking 300 is what got my attention with land speed racing. And besides, everybody knows the rocket cars and Challenger 1 and what Mickey and them did, but like for modern Salt cars, you guys going 300 in the Firebird is what brought me to paying attention to the Salt.
Wasn't Lingenfelter and Gale Banks, weren't they chasing that with similar chassis as well?
Yes, they were. And Gale had a big block Chevrolet in his, and Gale had, with his business and such, there was a lot of other distractions for him. So he never chased it probably as hard as he could have or should have. Gary Akers owns a wind tunnel, the A2 wind tunnel in Charlotte. And he, at the time, was working for General Motors in their wind tunnel. And him and Carl Stagermeyer actually built their Firebird, and then Lingenfelter got involved with that car. And that car came the closest to going 300. They actually went 296 or 298 with that car, tantalizingly close. But, for 3 years, they kept trying and trying. And I think John finally just got tired of messing with it. It just wasn't worth it for him. Again, another man that had a business to run, and you're taking time away to go chase these dreams. And, in our case, the Kugels and myself, this is our hobby. This is what we do for fun. And, it's serious. We take it dead serious, but we're not, we're always going to come back. We're going to be back next year. We're going to be back the year after. Jerry is 80 years old this year, and he set a record with a 29 Ford Roadster back in 1979 at 245 miles an hour with a 258-inch twin turbocharged small block on alcohol.
Wow.
That record is still in the book today. And I actually built him a new engine this year, and he took the car back to Bonneville this year, 40 years later, to try to reset that record. Unfortunately, the salt didn't cooperate this year, but Jerry's going to keep going. He's, like I said, he's 80 now.
That's awesome.
Since I was
going out there this weekend?
No, we won't be going to the World of Speed. Jerry's talking about going up to the World Finals, which is next month.
Another couple weeks. Yep.
But I work for a living, and I can't take off any more time, so we won't be going back till next year. But we'll always be going.
So, Mike, without delving into secrets or things you don't want to share, when you talk about an engine that has to operate at wide open throttle, maybe even limited, cooling airflow because of aero reasons, depending upon production or not, what are the things that you do with engines, again, that you want to share with everybody here to make them live for a minute and a half of wide open throttle, as opposed to a lot of the folks on this show tonight, are thinking in terms of 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds of wide open throttle. What has to happen to make an engine successfully repeat and produce power under those circumstances?
Wow, I wish I knew the answer to that question. First off, I want to say that I don't think anything's a secret. Okay, I've freely told other people how I've accomplished things in the past. A lot of times people just didn't even believe me. So it was just one of those things, that racers have a tendency to be cagey. If you tell them the truth, they still think you're being cagey. The Firebird engine was 368 cubic inches. We ran it on gasoline. It was twin turbocharged. It was a standard small block Chevrolet in that time frame, 23-degree cylinder heads. And what basically we were dealing with was a bow tie block at the time, which was a cast off from one of my Trans Am racing programs. And the cylinder heads was a set of Dart cylinder heads and roller can. And I think the
basic stuff, really, just stout.
It's just endurance engine package is what I like to tell people. So, you get your bearing clearances right, you get your piston to wall and your ring end gaps right. You don't need to be crazy about anything. It's just balance. Good, durable stuff.
It needs to be durable, and it just needs to have good balance. That's all a turbo motor needs. Because the turbo is going to do the work. You just better make sure the parts you put in the motor can stand up to the, I know it's cliche to say, but can stand up to the pressure.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, in my case, I don't run them as hard as a lot of people do. So the Firebird, for instance, had two fairly large turbos, and that allowed us to run we were running about 18 pounds of boost. That was 4 horsepower and 18 pounds of boost. And that was enough to go 300. And I didn't want to go, any faster than that necessarily, unless I had to. It was get the job done. So
we tell a lot of people the boost pressure isn't necessarily the amount of power you're making. It's just where the restriction is that your manifold pressure sensor is seeing. It doesn't mean that you only have a certain amount of airflow, because if you have enough airflow, that boost pressure will drop down lower with the same amount of air.
That's correct. And so what you're saying is exactly what I was going to say here is that so you had two fairly large turbos. So we had a lot of airflow through with the turbos. And I imagine this has been pointed out before. Anything that you can do to the engine normally aspirated, I think somebody had asked earlier about the Dodge NASCAR motor. If you can make more power normally aspirated, it's going to help you make more power turbocharged within reason. You don't need to get real thin valve seats. You still need to have a fairly wide valve seat to transfer heat from the valves to the cylinder heads. If you can use, copper bronze seats, beryllium, all the better. But anything you can do to make an endurance engine survive is going to be a better program for a turbocharged engine.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because like I helped a guy up in Washington State. He runs an S10 pickup truck in modified mini pickup, I think, at Bonneville, and he's got the record there. And we've got like a single 80 millimeter on it that makes like 9 pounds of boost.
Yep.
And he's like, I don't want to make any more boost. I'm like, I'm a drag racer. 10 pounds of boost ain't nothing. 110 degree IATs, we ain't even getting warm yet. What are you worried about? And he's like freaking out because they're in the 100 degree. They're already into the triple digits.
Yeah, I have a tendency to one of the things that I pay attention to is the inlet air temperatures. So we have ice water intercooling, but if we're over 130 degrees inlet air temperatures, we're not doing something right somewhere else. So,
not with an air to water, you're not. No, but we're actually just a small. We're non-intercooled on this combination, so he was freaking way out when they got up to like 110, 120.
Yeah. You can go another 10 degrees and not worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've run E85 at 180 degrees, so I wasn't too worried about it at all.
I was about to say you can go like another 70 degrees and not worry about it there. Upwards of 180 is where I start worrying.
On 10 pounds.
I think the question is for how long?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I could see it going to 160, 170 at Bonneville. On 10 pounds, if they got that warm at that pressure ratio. Now, if it was 18 pounds, no. But like 10 pounds, I think I could stand for it to get a little bit warmer than that without worrying about it hurting anything.
Yeah, probably true.
But so are there any other, racing genres and things that you've been involved in besides just the land speed, Mike?
Oh, yeah. I mean, gosh, if I go back, I got started out at Bonneville early. I was 23 years old when I went the first time. But as I continued to go to Bonneville, I was also I got involved in road racing. I did some drag racing early on. I had a C Econo dragster when C Econo dragsters were supposed to be economy. It was back, when you couldn't port the heads and all the things you couldn't do. So, I did a little bit of drag racing. We did SCCA Trans Am road racing for about the better part of 6 or 7 years. Went to Indianapolis for 3 years with the Buick program, which was fun, but it was discouraging at the same time because it was a uphill battle doing it with the factory. But it was still a very good learning experience. And
I've read so many stories on the factory Buick program for Indy. It's cool to have somebody on the show who was a part of that, because you see all the pictures of like all the Indy motors, the prototypes that are sitting on stands in museums and stuff now, and to think about them actually being in a car and running, and to go back and being a part of that kind of makes me wish I was a part of that, because that was like, to me, that's like the heyday of the beginning of the turbo era with things like that.
We worked with the original iron blocks back when I was doing it. When Menards got involved, and they went to the aluminum block and did some other things. But the original iron blocks were problematic. And then when they let when they came out with the on-center blocks, that really helped the Buick program quite a bit. But it was still pretty much a factory block and factory heads, and there weren't a lot of parts available for the Buick, so everything was being made that we needed to run that program. But it was still a difficult road to hoe. But it was fun nonetheless. There was a lot to be learned there. The road racing part of it was interesting for me because that allowed me to travel all around the country and see other places and do other things. And we flew to Japan 3 different times to run endurance races over there, and ran at Fuji and ran at the name eludes me right now. The Formula One track over there that I can't think where Honda's Formula One track is, but just a wonderful experience going over there and racing over there and stuff. So that's been a lot of the background, and then of course some offshore power boats and just pretty much anything and everything. I've been involved in a lot of it.
The Suzuka circuit, the F1 track in Japan.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, man.
So offshore power boats, people talk about that as being the great blue dino. Similar kind of question, when you're doing engines for that, how different is that discipline from the other ones you've been talking about? And how do you approach those changes from one kind of context to another?
I think they're very similar. I mean, in terms of how you assemble the engine, you're not really changing much. There's differences in camshafts and what you want as far as engine speed limitations and such. Those are things that all get into when you're looking at that kind of application. But in all honesty, an endurance engine is an endurance engine, and I had done some boat stuff early on, and my original Bonneville background took the boat technology and put it into the Bonneville engines. So I consider them very similar.
That's awesome. Okay. What's with the drone stuff? Well, what did you do with the military drones aircraft? Is that something you can talk about? I just saw the picture at one point in time.
Yeah, I mean, there was an opportunity that came up, and to be honest, if I still had if world hadn't changed in 2008, I'd still work there. I think that job was absolutely the neatest job I ever had. Working for the government, working for DARPA is kind of interesting because DARPA, they don't just give you money. You have to be producing something that they want, and it has to be showing progress. So they want you doing cutting edge stuff all the time. And but if you're making improvements and showing progress, they give you more money, and that allows you to sit and dream up new ideas and come up with new things. At the time that I was working on that program, the Predator, that was everything was done in-house. We had our own autoclaves for all the carbon fiber wings and airframes. We were building our own servos for the ailerons, and we had we built our own disc brakes for the thing to stop it when it landed. The engine totally built in-house, everything: camshafts, crankshafts, cylinder blocks, the castings, all that stuff was done in-house. Put the sleeves in, did everything. It was kind of like a little Offenhauser opposed 4-cylinder engine, kind of like a Volkswagen, but it didn't have a separate cylinder head. It was a cylinder block assembly on a crankcase, like an Offenhauser. And we built our own gearbox 3-to-1 reduction gearbox. We had variable pitch propellers. It was a real interesting project. And it just allowed you to step out of your comfort zone and say, you know what, we need to try this, or here's what the data is telling us. We need to make this change. And we would just go into the machine shop and do it. We'd make things different. And, you know, a little engine like that was making, I think it was 40, if I remember right, 46 or 48 cubic inches. It was about the size of a briefcase. And it would make about 38 horsepower at the configuration we were building it in at that time. That was for endurance. It would fly to like 28,000 feet at that point in time. And at that height, it was only making about 8 horsepower because of the air that was available.
Right.
So it was on the verge of barely staying in the air at that point.
Right.
But it was an interesting program, and obviously General Atomics eventually bought it, and Boeing. The government pulled the plug on it when I was still there and decided that they weren't going to fund a lot of different projects that they had going on at that time, including the Predator. And then other companies stepped in and bought it, and then it had been revived. So today you see the Predator as what it is. It's still a very viable remotely piloted aircraft.
Super cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about stuff that, you know, there's lots of books and interesting fiction written about how Predator drones are used in advanced combat and technology. And I don't, you know, I'm not sure everybody thinks about the fact that, well, what powers those? How do they work? And for those of you who are younger and may not understand what DARPA and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration, I believe, is what the DARPA acronym stands for.
That's correct.
And go ahead.
They are always out to look for new technologies to protect all of us, if you will. So,
DARPA, for folks who want boring history, is where our modern internet came from, because the ability to have multiple redundant connections between defense sites is what eventually evolved into what we now think of as the internet and the stuff we all take for granted these days. I have a background working for a company called Cisco Systems, so I know a little tiny bit about that. But you know, that's the kind of fundamental research that DARPA funds. And it's so cool. I had no idea you had done that kind of work as well as all these other things. But, you know, we're here on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And it's kind of cool to be talking to someone who's been on the front lines of helping keep the country safe through technology that ties all the way back to the racing environment. So thank you.
yeah, no problem.
I have one question about the Predator drone.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, nobody. How did it run the electrical systems on that? Did it run off the engine? Did it have a complete separate power source for all the guidance and camera systems and stuff they run on it? Or how did they get the electrical power to all the electronics?
We did have batteries on board. They weren't very large, but we did have batteries. But what's very common today, which was kind of groundbreaking back then, was we had a starter alternator system on the engine. So the way the engine started was an external power supply plugged into the plane, and that would rotate the rotor, if you will, that was in the flywheel area, and there were magnets in that, and that's what would rotate the engine to start the engine. And then once the engine was running, that became an alternator, and then there was the power supply.
Man, that's pretty cool. Because you see that chassis and you see that airframe and how little like fuselage space is in it. in the grand scheme of things. When you see, you see some of the body panels off of it, and you just see, electronics boxes stacked on top of each other from one end of it to the other, and you just
have a lot of fuel aboard too, because that plane would stay aloft for up to 72 hours. So, if it's up in the air for 3 days or so, you're talking about a fair amount of fuel too. So
you got to make sure that thing don't spring an oil leak too.
That's a long time to be spying on somebody. Just saying.
Yeah, well, it helped.
I mean, I get it, but that's a long time to be up there.
If you're old enough to remember General Noriega in Panama, and when he was deposed, if you will, that might have been how that happened.
I mean, I can only hang out in the bushes with binoculars for a couple hours before I got to take a pee break.
Awesome.
National security items being revealed tonight here on RealTuners.
That's what we need, Billy.
Secret Service is going to be knocking on all our doors in 30 minutes, just confiscating computers and shit.
The beauty of, again, the internet, which was originally funded by DARPA and was a project, allowing universities and others to connect to one another for research purposes, has now turned into a medium for which this can really no longer be recalled. So, again, thanks to the people who've defended our freedoms and our ability to have this conversation in the first place. That's just pretty cool.
Well, thanks, Mike, for your time tonight. That was outstanding, man. Does anybody else have any questions for him before we let this guy get back to his regular routine? Nobody? Going once? Going twice? Sold.
Hey, guys, I want to thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and I always worry about how much there is to talk about, but it seems like you guys do a good job of figuring out what to ask.
No, man, you came to the right place. That's why I was like, this is pretty easy. Just we can wing it. You're with a bunch of gearheads here, so there's
a bunch of us who know how to ramble on.
Right.
Yeah, Mike, when we see you online, how do you typically post? How do you identify yourself online in the various forums and all that?
On Facebook, I'm just on Facebook. If I'm on landracing.com, I'm under Dyno Room. And that's usually, if I'm on any other forums, that's the handle I'm using is Dyno Room.
Yeah, I knew the answer to this question, but I just wanted to tell our audience that when you see someone posting as Dyno Room, that's Mike Lefevers, who you've had a chance to meet tonight. And if I mispronounced your last name, I apologize. But, this is one of those, this is an opportunity to sit back and listen and learn whenever you see Dyno Room posting. So, again, thank you so much for honoring us with you being on tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks especially for me. It's been a pleasure having you on, to have somebody come on to going back to my beginnings in this industry, and something that I remember 20 years ago. It's been a pleasure.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it, John.
Thank you, sir.
Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Next up, Mr. Bewley. You went to LS Fest this last weekend, didn't you?
Hey, you know what? Me and my twin brother were at LS Fest this weekend. Mike?
Side by side in a smart car.
There's pictures.
Oh my God, were you guys in a smart car? Really?
There's pictures to prove it too. Me and Mike Perdugo. Now the picture this. I'm 6'1", 385. Mike 6'5", 3 1/4. Me and Mike shoulder to shoulder, sitting in William Tetro's smart car.
I mean, is that even possible?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we shut the doors too.
Clown car status?
No, it wasn't actually too bad. I had to put my arm around him because shoulder to shoulder, it was a little bit cramped because they are a little short on shoulder room. But once I put my arm around him and gave him a hug, everything was fine.
I got to come hang out with you guys, because I will look like
the little guy at 6'3", 275. I'm looking forward to this opportunity.
Maybe PRI this
Now,
year.
let me be
I'm like
clear.
a goddamn
Hell
midget.
We did not try and move the smart car. I don't know if the smart car would have even moved. We didn't try and go anywhere. We were just in the smart car.
Yeah, we probably need to replace the tires and the springs on the
So
smart
you're saying
car after we
suspension
did.
was in a bind?
It might have been. I don't know. We probably had a little fender to tire interference going on. We didn't want to risk blowing a tire by actually trying to move the car with us in it, but we were in the smart car.
I just love that. That's awesome.
But yeah, Mike came up with Will Tetro and bought the little Pocket Rocket RX-7 up out of Florida. I was there with him and hanging out with him and Derek Kelly with Bam Bam and all the other guys. I'd never seen so many LJMS stickers on cars in my life. It was awesome to see everybody out there, from the Grinch truck to, God, there's so many I can't even remember them all. But it was a really, really good time. I mean, it was the 10th year anniversary of LS Fest this year. And, they put on a show. They did a pretty good job, all in all, considering the amount of people that were there, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to relate it to like a duck-sized race, but the amount of people per square foot was probably similar for the smaller facility. It was packed, bro.
So up at the LS Fest on that end of the country, like out here, like the drifting stuff is just huge, right? Because there's a whole bunch of those guys out this way. How is what's the big event up on that end? Is it still kind of drag racing, or is there some other event that kind of shines a little bit?
It's almost a three-pronged deal, because the drifting even over here has gotten to the point where it's pretty big. And I don't know how many drift cars they had, but they had quite a few. And then on top of that, they have the road course at the National Corvette Museum. So they have the road course.
Yeah, there's always a bunch of road course
guys
guys there.
Yeah, and they had the Grand Champion competition that Danny Pop and all those guys compete in. So, what is it? Ultimate Streetcar Challenge?
Yeah, the Optima guys. Yeah,
the Optima guys were doing their thing with the Ultimate Streetcar stuff. They had drifting going on. They had a big freestyle burnout contest in the middle of the drift track. And then they had the drag program. The drag program has kind of been the light has been shown on the road racing and the Optima Challenge stuff a little bit brighter the last few years than just the drag program. But the drag program is probably still the biggest draw of LS Fest East. This weekend was the fullest I have ever seen Beach Bend's pits. If you've ever been to Beach Bend and you've gone down the track and you've gone all the way to the end to the very last turnout and you come back, there's a little drainage ditch down there between the second and the third turnout, like way down there, out in the boonies. There's no lights, there's no nothing. And there's a little tree line there. And that's the first time I've ever seen people pitted past that tree line, literally at the end of the shutdown, but down by the sand trap. And
wow.
Beach Bend is an extremely
long ways
long
out there.
drag street.
I've been there too.
There's a great shutdown there.
Amazing.
That's a long shutdown space there.
Yeah, I mean, you can come down from I know guys that run pro mods at Beach Bend that can come down from 250, 270 on brakes alone
Coasting.
and never drop the laundry there. Yeah, and if they're on the brakes too damn hard, they got to refire the motor to drive off the end of the track because they run out of momentum to make the last turn off and get on the return road. And there was literally guys halfway between that drainage ditch and the sand trap, and it's way the hell on down there.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, to give you an idea, we rolled in Thursday night about 8:00, and we were pitted at the scales past the finish line.
Wow.
And the guys were still rolling in at, midday Friday, mid-afternoon on Friday. it was just absolutely insane. The index classes and stuff were just huge, huge, huge. And, I have to give Holly and that whole crew some props because they actually implemented a class this year that had a really good card count. And I think we put on a really good show. They did a 10,000 to win 28-inch no time shootout on Saturday night. And I think we probably, out of all like the heads up style cars that were there, non-index stuff, we had 24, 25 cars. It was originally full at 32, but not all the guys showed up, but it was a good time.
And I gave the track crew a bunch of crap for the track and whatnot, but bro, they had to have 20 oil downs in one day. It was absolutely insane what those guys had to put up with.
They had 3 back to back to back that had no more than 2 pair go down in between them.
Yeah, I saw the one day they had like stuff up till about till 10 o'clock in the morning they were running, and then they had oil downs, and they weren't running again till like 10:30 at night.
Yeah, from like we sat in the staging lanes from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon until like 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Jeez.
For two back-to-back oil downs. They had an oil
Somebody
down.
bring the driver a cheeseburger.
Yeah, and a diaper. Bring him a diaper. But it was a good time, even despite all that. Hopefully, they can take what they learned from this year and improve on it again for next year.
So John and Mike, this is a 2-part question because you've touched on one of the things. It's been obvious to anybody who's been following the Drag Week live feed that there's been a little bit of Loans called LS Fest, Brian Loans as the announcer, and it became clear. I did not watch the feed from LS Fest, so I have no direct experience either being there or even listening. But it's clear that the reputation for the LS indestructible bottom end, blah, blah, has now run into the irresistible force of power adders and turbocharging, resulting in the oil downs. So
we have found where it destroys itself.
Yeah, this is an interesting kind of conundrum here because the platform that had developed its, affection because of size and packaging and durability and all this is suddenly running into, you can actually break these things.
Yeah, the cool thing about the LS.
Where do you guys see this going? Where are we going with the LS platform now that it's actually no longer in production, as far as I know?
Oh, it's still going to go. You look at LS Fest and, some of the other ones. It's for a race that's dedicated to an engine platform. I honestly think the LS has the biggest following of any platform that's ever come to exist. Like small block forward with the NMRA.
There's never been such a thing. It's unique unto itself, to my knowledge. I've never heard of,
Well, you had a whole series dedicated to Ford powered racing with the NMRA, so, and I can say, I've been to, you had the World Ford Challenge there for like 10 or 11 years. And, I was there.
You had Fun Ford Weekend. They had Rock Motor Nationals.
Yeah. And I was there for the first 7 or 8 World Ford Challenges. And there was never, granted, the World Ford Challenge was nothing but a drag race. I'll give it that. But from a pure size perspective, man, there's somebody posted an aerial view of Beach Bend, and there's a pavilion on the east side of the park, on the other side of the water park. And that's where people were checking in at and things. And there's RV parking, and there's probably room to put 300 rigs over by there. And then the freaking campground was full of rigs. And then, the vendors midway at LS Fest is probably one of the most crazy things I've ever seen, because you see the vendors midway at, NMRA races and NMCA races and stuff. And, it's a row of trailers on one side and a row of trailers on the other. And if anybody's ever been to Beach Bend, there was not one drag racer parked in the paved pits at Beach Bend. Okay. That whole area between the river and the staging lanes, that huge pit space was all nothing but vendor row. And it was like 4 rows deep. It was like 4 rows deep, all the way to the grass, all the way to the tree line, all the way up to the entry road, which is right beside pit lane. And there was some big haulers and stuff parked on the inside of pit row, toward between the track and the staging lanes on that side. But man, there was less than 50 people parked on pavement for this race this weekend.
Yeah, because as a sponsor or a vendor, you're going to write a 4-figure or 5-figure check to be in that space. That's how that works. So yeah, it's the biggest thing that's ever been along these lines that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was probably the single biggest automotive event I have ever attended. And the lines to get into the track on Saturday morning proved that pretty well.
I can tell you our drinker is Mike Perduto.
Outside the track for 3 hours. Yes.
What was that, Scott?
I said, I think it sounds like our drinker over there sloshing is Mike Perduto. So I'm going to join him with a drink because I need to drink too.
Yeah, everybody drink.
I don't.
That might have been me. I apologize. I did not.
Then I'm joining. Then I'm joining Bill. Then.
Damn it, Bill.
It's okay. We both drink whiskey. It's fine.
Ice Cube.
It is whiskey.
There were guys coming in the track saying that they were waiting 3 hours to get in the gate from the time they stopped at the end of the line where the cars were stopped.
Wow, that's a long wait for that place. Like I lived in Nashville for about 5.5 years, and that was the regular track that I went to, and it just regular test and tune night. You're in line for 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, and you're in. It's no big deal. But man, that's a long time to have to wait in line to go in.
I will say that
John will know the names of the roads, but they were out on that main road, not the road leading into the track, but out around
the little one that goes down through the farms,
out by the stoplight.
Well, you come in Beach Bend Road, you come in on 31W and you make the right-hand turn, you cross over the railroad tracks, and you go up there to it used to be Camping World, but it's a printing company now. And basically that starts Beach Bend Road. And it's a 2-lane road for about 3.5 miles to get into the track. Well, that road was completely bumper to bumper all the way to the gates.
Wow. And because if you go out that road, there's a gas station that has like 110 and 112 and it has some premium race fuel at that gas station right there.
It's 2 blocks away from the railroad tracks. Well, if you went that way, getting into the track that way, if you had gone that way, it was blocked up to that. It was backed up to that gas station, all the way to the next intersection, past the next intersection, down in front of the water treatment plant, all the way back to the Kroger. Now that is a solid mile away from the 4-way stop at the railroad tracks. 31W, which is if you get off exit 28 and you come into Beach Bend, up by the old tobacco barns, I saw pictures of people backed up all the way up to the tobacco barns. Well, that's 4 miles from the 4-way stop at the railroad tracks. And it was just absolutely ridiculous trying to get into that place, 8, 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. I've never seen that many people at Beach Bend on the grounds at Beach Bend in my life. It was absolutely huge.
When I lived in Nashville there, we had that big flood that flooded Beach Bend, and it was literally the entire thing up to the scoreboards, up to the time boards, like underwater. I'm so glad that place survived because it's just flourished. It's for racers. It's one of the better places to go to race, I think, in my opinion.
I mean, the history of Beach Bend. There was a lot of fuel ran at Beach Bend back in the day. Yeah. That track's been around for a long, long time. There were, as far as a racetrack on the East Coast, it's really, in my opinion, it's probably not that far removed from Indy. You start ranking racetracks east of the Mississippi, you've got Indy, Gainesville, Maryland International Dragway, and I honestly think Beach Bend can be put in that conversation with those tracks. You know, I mean, it's a wonderful facility. You know, the covered bleachers, the stadium seating bleachers, and just it's a beautiful location and beautiful grounds. The only problem with Beach Bend is it sets on that floodplain at the river, and it's like you come over the hills and you drop down into the grounds, and like there's enough of an elevation change that it kind of sits down in this little bowl. And if it's warm and no breeze blowing,
it's hot.
It gets hot. Yeah.
Oh, man. You have got to have one hell of a breeze blowing for you to feel it down on track level, you know. And, you know, Beach Bend's my home track. I grew up 12 minutes from that track. And,
hey, if you're there for an event,
there's 96.
If you're there for an event that you've come from out of town and you only make it a couple rounds, there's also the whole facility there that you can go have fun at to at least make it a fun weekend. You know, you got the whole amusement park thing right there.
Hell yeah. I mean, when you got entry into LS Fest, that gave you a free pass to the water park on Saturday. So
that's it.
You know, at least one person could go have some fun for free just, you know, being there. But, you know, the water park and then the roller coasters and you know, the rides for the kids and stuff, you know, Beach Bend is really like, it's almost like a destination location, right? You bring the RV, bring the family, the kids can do the water park, dad can do the racing. You know, it's a fun place to go and spend time. I love that track.
Yeah, it's a great place. So I'm curious, John, for you and Mike, we're at what has to be, you know, a high water mark, just everything we just talked about with LS Fest. Where is this going now? You know, what are the things that you guys see, you know, for people that are, you know, building cars, investing in the platform, wanting to go faster? I mean, the drag week is going on this week and it's filled with LS, you know, turbo everything. You know, what should people be thinking about? What should they be doing? You know, what's the way to think about this platform and how to build it going forward?
I mean, as long as it's got a turbo on it, everything will be fine. I mean, let's be real here.
I mean, they still build small block Chevys. They still build small block Fords. I mean, it's not like it's still got another, in my opinion, 10, 15 years to go and expand.
I mean, the challenge is keeping it all going while the EPA starts shutting things down in a way that make it harder and harder for racers like us to continue with conventional V8 motors and have fun with them. You know, that's where the real challenge comes in. Is as we move forward, we have to start fighting all the restrictions.
That's what the next interruption is probably going to be. It's not going to be, hey, the next engine to come along. It's going to be, hey, we better do this with electric cars. We want to have fun.
Yeah, or we deal with a bunch of stuff rolling off the line with locked out ECUs that we can't do anything with and can't make modifications to. But you know, is that really? I don't necessarily know how that's going to work because the manufacturers are stepping up and evidently giving us stuff that make enough power to keep us entertained fairly well without having to go in and play with them some more. But as far as the new aftermarket, right? I mean, we've got a new vet coming out that's 800 plus horsepower from the factory. And, you know, and this is going to surprise a bunch of people, but the power plant that I am most looking forward to from the new Corvette is the naturally aspirated one. There is the 32 valve, 5.5 liter motor that is coming out that is rated at 600 horsepower. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a higher. That is a higher horsepower per liter rating than the Ford Coyote.
Oh, here they come.
So,
yeah, but not higher than the GT 350 motor.
Actually, it is higher than the GT 350 motor, Bill. Sorry to burst your bubble, but
we're gonna have to investigate this a little bit. I haven't seen this new one in production yet, so I don't know.
Bill's been drinking; he doesn't understand.
Right. Yeah. Bill, the motor's rated 600 horsepower, 5.5 liter. That works out to roughly 110 horsepower per liter. The GT350 engine is rated at 526 horsepower, and it is 5.2 liter. That is just like 100.7, barely, maybe one. I'll give it 101. Just for argument's sake this evening.
Talking peak power again, like we're going to go race our fucking irrigation pumps or generators.
Well, yeah.
The new naturally aspirated.
We'll see the curves when the curves come out, but just, we're just working off of factory ratings for the current point in time.
I think there's something to be said for being able to bench race and argue about, factory horsepower, because that's how it's been for a very long time, and it's fun. I don't know the exact answer here. I would, in that case, I'm going to throw out Ford GT. But anyway, let's see how it all works out.
Supercars don't have V6s.
The Florida GT.
I can't completely disagree with you on that one, John.
The flop GT.
The Corvette skid pad makes that GT irrelevant.
Yeah.
Now be careful.
The Corvette price tag makes the GT irrelevant.
Right. Gregory, there's
fraction of the price.
Gregory, there's going to be two different versions of the 5.5 liter engine. There will be a naturally aspirated motor, and there will be a twin turbo version of that engine that is going to be rated. I want to say the listing that I saw on the powertrain, there was two different 850 horsepower versions of it. One had 750 pound-feet of torque. And then what I think is going to be the power plant for the hinted at Zora supercar that they say that is going to come on this new chassis. It's going to be electrically assisted all-wheel drive. And they're rating that at 850 horsepower and 922 foot-pounds of torque.
That's going to be a lot of fun to drive. That's going to be very dangerous to drive for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's going to be ridiculous. It was interesting that they don't give the motor any more horsepower, but it jumps 172 foot-pounds of torque from 750 to 922. I thought that
and
was
that
kind
tells
of
you that it's going to be an amazing torque monster. And most people don't think about that. In general, we think in horsepower numbers, right? And not many people think in that broad, flat torque curve that's going to happen. And thinking about that, in order to have that kind of torque, that means it's probably pretty broad, pretty flat, amazing torque everywhere, which means it's just going to fly. And either you're going to obliterate the tires and go nowhere, which I highly doubt that's the case, or you're going to go really fast and people are going to lose their shit over it.
I think the car's going to end up with probably the biggest tire package we've ever seen on a Corvette. That's probably going to approach what the Viper was equipped with from the factory.
315s all around?
No, a 345 in the back.
345 all around?
The Viper was a 345 on the back with a...
it's going to be a wide rubber for sure.
Yeah, it was it depended on spec. If you were an ACR, it was a 305 in the front, or the regular one was a 295.
Yeah. I honestly think this Corvette would probably be the first Corvette that comes out with 300 plus widths on front and back. I think it'll be 305, 355. Like
a lot of fat ass memes coming up.
Oh, dude. Seeing like the C8R, the testing from Sebring and stuff, and hearing that car, that flat plane 5.5 has got a very unique exhaust note, and the body lines on that car are going to be the body lines on it are going to be really, really, ridiculous when they start putting the big booty Judy fenders and quarters on the car to cover that. All
I know is I think we all should be out buying this stuff now, whatever floats our boat, whichever car it is. I don't know how much longer we're going to have this. It's an interesting, sort of sideline observation. The first Tesla that's ever run at Drag Week has been running this week. The guy has been able to run consistent 1040s
I was watching the live feed yesterday, and they actually announced that he set a world record for a Tesla yesterday. That he broke the quarter-mile ET record for a Tesla at Drag Week yesterday.
Yeah, they were talking about that. What was a little more interesting is, and again, I've been here pumping, getting my house ready to move. So I watched the whole live feed today, and the guy hot lapped the thing for like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 passes. It was very interesting because it went from 1040 to 1050 to 1060, but then it settled in at 1060s. Now, again, I'm saying the words out loud here, 1060s, 4-wheel electric car, drag radials. And, everybody look in their little heart of hearts and think about what you got sitting out in the garage there that will run consistent mid-10s every 5 minutes, because this guy was literally lapping it that fast. We're going to get to deal with or own or have fun with electric cars. And, hey, if I can beat the guy in the lane next to me with something, I'm going to consider it, right?
Hey, I mean, I've seen what that dude in North Carolina that's got that white P100D.
Yeah,
that's gutted and goes out in street races with it. Shit, I mean, that thing ain't no joke. But I don't know. I still got to have something that makes some noise. Got to have an exhaust note.
Yeah, I admit, the noise is an important thing. I don't know.
Do you think at some point that somebody's just going to put a speaker on the outside of the car that just makes exhaust noises?
It's gonna have to tie into the rheostat, so it sounds like the RPMs come up, and like it shifts or something. I don't know.
I don't know how many people are listening on here have driven one of these cars, but there is something kind of spooky fun about the rate of acceleration when you can literally, anything that you drive where it's at the edge of traction, you can feel that squirm in the tire. And their torque management program is pretty awesome because you can feel the car working under you to go as fast as it can with the traction available. We all know that the EFI systems that the tuners on here are working on are doing that same sort of thing where you can hear it just on the edge of the tire going down the track for guys going genuinely fast. And that's what that thing does all by itself. And the fact that it does it in this hauntingly silent way is kind of cool. I gotta say, everybody will form their opinion, but
they're pretty fun.
Yeah.
No, I do think the future's in electric, but I think you'll see more of these hybrids like John's talking about, where you have the gas and the electric hybrid together before you'll see a full electric swing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way all the hypercars are right now. The LaFerrari and the 918 Porsche and, all the fast cars are these combination hybrid electric gas combo cars. So I think the Zora and the ZR1, whatever they give us, whatever they call that from the Corvette, will be the beginning of us seeing that over here. And then I think that'll trickle down, and we might eventually get to see, a sedan style car with that kind of a driveline in it. I don't know how long it's going to be before we get something like that. But
actually, before the sedan necessarily hits, is I test drove a Lincoln Aviator recently, and they're going to have one called the Grand Touring, which is a plug-in hybrid. And before y'all nod off on me, the bottom line is it's a 3.5, motor with additional electric. So the bottom line is it produces 600 foot-pounds and 580 horsepower. And that's going to be in an SUV, for God's sake. So, yeah, we're at a fascinating point in time here. I hope everybody goes out and enjoys and buys these cars and modifies them and gets LJMS camshafts and injectors from injector development, and because we're at the best time there has ever been, in the world to go fast and have fun with cars. So let's do it while we can.
I think that as things go, though, I think we're going to have more generations of this is the next best thing. Like, I don't think, while I like the V8 and I think it's amazing and I think it's the most fun right now, once the electric technology really takes off and really, like, how long was it before the motor actually became something that was a hot rod and was fast from when it first started? It was 50 years between when it was first really built and when people were really starting to make technology leaps with it. So potentially the electric technology, maybe we still got another 20 years before it takes off. So we take advantage of the V8 now, but in 20 years, electric technology may be so amazing that it makes our V8 motors today look like toys.
I think it's coming sooner than that.
No, I don't think it'll come sooner than that.
I don't think it's going to eradicate the internal combustion engines.
No,
certainly not. Definitely not. But
I mean, it's just like, dude, it's just like flatheads today. There's still a contingent of guys who are diehard flatties and who are applying modern technology to that, archaic platform.
As we can say for the carburetor as well.
Right.
Now, going to be that guy. Oh, you're stupid electric motors, blah, blah, blah. There's my combustion engine here.
And I can turn into that 70-year-old man that I knew when I was 19 years old who was telling me all about, flat heads with 3 offies and a set of, what was the heads? The
heads.
What? Oh yeah, the Arden overhead valve conversion on a flatty and crap like that. I'll be that guy talking about big block Chevrolets and LS engines 50 years from now.
I think every one of us will be that guy. This generation is going to be that whole group of people that becomes the old dude who's telling all the stories about the engines way back when.
Back in my day.
We actually had to put fuel in the vehicles every once in a while. They didn't just charge themselves.
I think the one thing that will remain universal is when you pull up next to somebody at a stoplight, and until the point where we all have autonomous vehicles, we have no choice anymore. God help us. All I know is I want to go faster than the guy in the lane next to me.
Right?
Somebody's going to get a head nod.
Yep.
Yes.
There's going to be a head nod and a bump and a bump in. There's going to be a bump into the light. Oh, but speaking of going faster than the guy next to you in the other lane, let's talk about Drag Week. What do we got going on with Drag Week? Who's got what doing what?
I got McIntyre still this year. McIntyre McConnell. They just sent me an email. They're still in it. So what's that? End of day. And they're naturally aspirated. He's running bottom 8s. He thinks they picked too tight of a converter this year.
He's knocking on 170 mile an hour so hard, though. 169 and change.
They actually so their last run today, they hit that, and they ran an 80 something. I can't remember if it was 801 or 803 or whatever. And obviously, they did something to make the change. Scott, do you have any information on how they went from running an 875 in the prior pass to running an 80 in the next one, before they got out of Dodge today?
Quote our previous guest, I might know how it may have happened.
That's funny.
I'll tell you, Jeff turned off his function control. He's making all the changes. He'll call me. And it was... they gave it a little bit more or slip percentage, basically let it spin a little harder, even though he's on a radial. Another percent or two seemed to do it, not trip it. So he tripped it a couple times, he said, but it's that's what it ran. So they're having issues with that. The problem with that motor is it comes up on the cam like a 2-stroke. You wouldn't get a 700-inch motor, but it's a turd at 3,500 RPM, and it's an absolute monster at 5,800 RPM. Right?
At 700 cubic inches, it needs to breathe. Needs more RPM.
It's just like a turbo car where the converter couples and all the torque's coming in, and you got to dumb it down a little bit. They're having to do an RPM dip on that car as it comes on. So he's experimenting with that, and trying to figure out how much he can take out of the taking power out and still have it be hooked up. But it's all Jeff and Doc, man. They call for advice occasionally. I have not I don't have to team viewer or nothing. I mean, he'll have me look at a log if too many things, I helped him look at the first log on day one just to make sure they were good and that he had a good checklist of what to watch out for.
But it's an interesting car to watch because they're running that radial slick and trying to, quote unquote, dead hook it. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, and get the car, because you can tell when the car is soft on the leave, it's not going to go anywhere. And then you watch it again on this last run today. It's like, oh, okay, you guys actually can get it there. I don't know what it took. Whereas the guys running the LSX turbo combinations, it's been very interesting seeing the mixture between the guys trying to run the 850 index class, if I could use that phrase, and the guys that are actually just trying to flat go fast. And, ADCO today had big water grains, huge heat gain between the first session and the second session. And you could see the guys who are really getting a handle on that combination all on a small tire. So, that's where the tuning comes in, right?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. The power management. Yeah, that's for Doc. It's been quite a different thing for us than the turbo car. Man, we got to talk about. I mean, I love me some all motor stuff, but what is going on in what is it? Super Street small block power adder. So those guys are running faster than the big block power adder class Super Street. What's going on, big block guys? I mean, I think you got Coleman in there. Anyway, talk about Coleman a little bit. Bewley helped with that whole combo.
That's I did that combination for him, like intake to oil pan. And, Coleman is diehard drag weaker. This is fourth or fifth one in a row. And, we've just creeped up on it, and we've upgraded engine and turbos. And now we've got him in something that's literally, I think he's sitting on a 769 average as of this morning. So 790 something won it last year.
Wow.
So we've pushed that 3/10. That car is just rolling out with this current engine combination, man. She's just doing work. She's happy. He's been 183, 186, and 185 on the 3 slips that got turned in. We got a 771 on day one, a 760 flat yesterday, and a 769, I think, today. Interesting tidbit. A pair of 80 millimeter S400s will move enough air through a 4x9 inch single cone filter to make a 3,400 pound car still run 797 in a quarter mile.
I thought that was pretty interesting when you posted that today on Facebook. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. That they're moving some air. They're restricted, but man, they're still moving some air.
He has this 2-into-1 air intake system with a single cone filter that he mounts on the front of the turbos to street drive, and they
just forgot to take them off.
Take that off the car this morning, and they went out and first hit, and the car went 797 with the air filter still on the turbochargers. They took it off and went from 797 to 769 by just taking the air intake off the car.
That's kind of a common theme amongst a lot of drag week guys. They'll end up going and they'll forget that they just drove it, 400 miles. They'll be so tired from just the drive and dealing with stuff that they'll forget that they still have their air filters on. They pull up to the line just because they want to make a quick pass and get a time slip in and be all good and head to the next town and have some time to sleep, and they forget to do that. I've dealt with that a couple of times now through the years where somebody's just forgotten and they were like, man, my car slowed down like 0.3. Did you take the air filters off for the strip? Oh, yeah, we forgot about those things.
And Scott, you'd be
they're not used to doing
how
it.
easy that stuff is to do at the sleep deprivation nationals, which is what
I totally get it. I totally get it. When they do it, I'm like, yeah, you just forgot. You were tired, man. I get it. You're working you're putting in 16-hour days because you're in a race car.
And this is what's funny is Dan Morin, which is another employee at DVR, because DVR currently has 4 cars on drag week. They're all running together. David's got the Trackhawk. John's got the white Mustang. Dan Morin has got his red Mustang. And then they have Steven Salvati with them, who has another red Mustang. And Dan forgot his air filter too this morning. And he ran an 815 with the air filter on. Got all excited to see what John ran when he took his air filters off. Remembered to take his off, went back up for a second pass, and he only picked up 0.03. He went from an 815 to an 812 when he took his air filters off.
With my old combo at the strip, like I did a run and I had air filters on, and it was the same kind of thing. It was like no real difference at about 20 psi. It only made a difference when I was upwards of like 25, 28, 30 psi is when I started to notice it. It was like, oh, that's where it's the choke on the airflow. We found where it was, but.
Oh, and by the way, to everybody's listening that shared the post and the announcement earlier about getting Jonathan and those guys in contact with somebody with a welder, they were successful in finding somebody that had a welder to get the hot side repaired on Dan's car.
Thank you, real listeners.
Awesome.
So they're going to be able to continue on, after they make the repair and still have the performance up to the level out of what
that's great. That's awesome. You'll have the power of this whole media and connectivity. And John, I want to make something clear. And I heard what Scott Clark said a minute ago about small block cars going faster than big block cars. We're going to talk ahead of next year to see if we can make a big block car go a wee bit faster than some of these small blocks.
Well, I mean, I'm all about it. As long as it got turbochargers on it, you got my attention. You know that.
Well, we also got to figure out what they're doing.
You know the
that's
conversation we've been
slow.
having. You know the challenge we have with this tiny little 598 motor, with a couple of twins on it, and to see if we can get it to go somewhere reasonable. So that's the plan.
Well, I guess you just got to be clear what your opinion of reasonable is compared to mine, and we'll be able to figure that out.
Do you want to go as fast as me, Bill?
Is to go faster than the small block cars. That's my opinion of reasonable.
Right? I mean, if I think we ought to be able to run. We ought to have a 720 average in Super Street Big Block Power Adder. Looking at the rules for that class, it's a stock Fox with a big block and a pair of 85s on it. We should be able to run down. I mean, I should be able to run as fast as with some of the guys that I've got that run 85s on small blocks. I've got 3,600
15 to 20 pounds of boost and barely working.
Yeah, I've got guys with small blocks with 485s that can run down in the 730s at 195. And my goal for a Super Street Big Block Power Adder car would be an average at least in the 720s, if not the 17s, and a day 5 glory pass in the 690s at 200.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Once I had more bars to my car,
a 315 tire, by the way, so we're all good to go.
I'm happy. The big block car needs to be on a 315, not a 275. So that's and it needs to be on a radial to do this. So when you've got small block cars that are averaging 760s and that, God willing, and the creeks don't rise, show me a bottom 750, high 740 at 190 on day 5. We should be able to be 10 mile an hour faster than that and 2 to 3 tenths quicker.
You heard it here first, folks.
Predictions for Drag Week 2020.
That's right.
I'm not going for the drag week speed of that, but I'm going to do that on 275s just to be that guy.
I want your car to run 690s at 200 on a 275. That would be badass. That's the next barrier for me, and for all the guys that I work with, you and all the guys out there running my combinations is I want a customer with a street driven car that busts off into the 690s at 200.
For anybody who's listening, I need about 10 grand to upgrade my cage to be safe, please. I'd like to do that, but I want to do it safely.
You want to live when it happens. Live to enjoy it.
I got the chassis sitting here.
I've got a guy for you here.
I have the car.
Phoenix,
I have bars ready to go. It just needs to be added to and finished up to make it 650 safe.
I still think we need to take the Outlaw 632 car and do something with it, Mike. It needs turbos on it.
next year. Let me blow this 632 up one more time.
Hurry up and blow that damn nitrous motor up I did a cam for, that way we can put some puffers on it, for crying out loud.
One more time, sir. One more time.
One more time. One more again.
I mean, don't they just melt on their own usually? I mean,
not with Mike tuning, they don't. He can make the damn things last forever. That's the problem.
Oh, then he's not trying hard enough.
Without hurting it.
Do what, Mike?
So we went 135 passes without hurting it. And in our world, that's a year and a half of racing. So we get about a year and a half out of a refresh on it.
Sounds about right.
135 passes on a big block motor on spray is like twice as many as what normal people get.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow.
Well, normal people don't tune conservative. So if you tune it right, a full season is not a problem. You shouldn't, if you have to rebuild midway through the season, you're doing something a little bit too aggressive somewhere. Now, granted, if you're doing it because you're winning races.
You lean on it one time.
Say again, Mike?
Yeah, I said if you're running into a round where you got so much fast, we'll lean on it from time to time, and you might get a piston here and there. But as far as actually melting the motor down, no, that's rare. And unless I have a crank trigger electronics issue, it doesn't happen often anymore.
Hey, Mike, can you, for some of the audience that doesn't know you or the combination you currently run, can you kind of run through that for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 1969 Camaro, 6.0 cert, all Molly chassis, weighs right about 2,600 pounds on the starting line. It's got a Pat Musey built 632, sheet metal, twin carburetor, and two big Steve Johnson fogger systems on it. Old school power grade carbureted car.
With a cam ground by some dumbass who does turbos.
Yeah, so it's got a cam from some Turbo LS guy somewhere up in Kentuckiana or something along those lines in it.
Oh, God. No wonder it's fast. Jesus Christ.
That's powered by whiskey, right?
Do what, Bill?
If John Bewley tells you he doesn't do nitrous cams, you can call him a liar.
Yeah. Don't let everybody know the secret. Don't let the secret out to everybody that I do nitrous cams for big block Chevrolets and everything else. I might lose my rap.
Woo!
What?
Times are tough.
Times are tough.
Well, he was down to 14 cam sheets to deal with tonight, so it's kind of skimming the barrel there.
Skimming the bottom of the barrel. Got everything caught up. I had to find something to do to keep me occupied.
Right. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question here. So, you're working with Pat Musey on the mechanicals. You're working with Steve Johnson at Induction Solutions on the nitrous. You're dealing with John Bewley on camshafts. Everybody listening to this program is in the same spot with trying to manage information flow and who do I trust and how do I make decisions on this? And you're at the very deep end of the pond on this. So you've obviously been there. What advice do you have for people who are trying to figure out who do I talk to? How do I balance information from my builder, my nitrous guy, my camshaft guy, in order to get the kind of results that you actually get?
All right. First off, the best advice I can give anyone, don't do and buy into the custom one-off stuff that people will try and shove down your throat. We have some one-off heads that require a custom dome on the piston. Well, that custom dome on the piston requires custom pistons every time you need to order some. Well, they have to be cut 10 at a time. That requires a custom length rod that doesn't exactly come out of a catalog. So step one, if you're going to build something like this and this is the road you're going to go down, if the part's not available readily, Jag, Summit, whoever your wholesaler is or your part performance place is, don't buy the part. That being said, deal local or with the guys that you have a relationship with, the guys that will answer your phone calls and that can help you, because it's a very slippery slope and a very expensive one when you get down in that hole. Let me tell you something.
Thank you.
I just want to say,
I don't think that can be repeated enough for
I just want
everybody
to say
listening here.
the most important part he said was deal with the guy that's actually going to talk to you and help you. Don't just order a part because some guy gives you a deal. Order a part because the guy you're dealing with will help you in the end after you've bought the part when you need advice.
Absolutely. Like Steve at Induction Solutions, and I know there's a million nitrous companies out there. If I text Steve right now and say, hey, this is my problem, I'm going to get a response. Not so much. I mean, we didn't buy the motor directly from Pat, so I don't have that relationship with Pat, but my local machine shop guy that I do use, same thing. If I text him right now, hey, I need this, it's done. Like, he'll respond to me. That's huge. Everyone has this thing to want to be different, to want to try something new. That's a very, very expensive thing. And using your local guys that have experience and not necessarily what Facebook tells you to do will probably save you thousands in the long
run. That's awesome advice, Mike. I think everybody who's working combos and trying to get from one place to another has been in that situation. So thank you. Any other input? Because we're about to wrap up the show for the evening. We've had an awesome time. I never thought we'd be hearing about insights on how the Predator drones stay up in the air, but that's why you listen to Real Tuners, damn it. So any other advice for guys that are trying to follow in your footsteps a little bit?
Go to the racetrack and talk to the guys doing it and see who they're using. Everyone's a know-it-all on Facebook. Everyone will tell you how it's done, but go find the guys actually doing it. The majority of guys, I mean, me and Don saw it this weekend. You can walk into just about anyone's pit and have a conversation with them. Ask them for help. Ask them for advice. Ask them whose parts they're using. And the majority of them, even the gentleman on before me who's, we were talking, the secret, he's like, there is no secrets. Everyone will tell you. They'll help you. That's the beauty of this world and the beauty of the people we race with. And, they've probably spent the money. They've probably learned, and listen to them before you spend the same money they did twice.
One of the best signs I have ever seen at a drag strip simply said, make friends, have fun. Most important part of drag racing. Don't care who you're racing. Don't care how fast, how slow. Don't care anything else about it. Make friends, have fun.
Be safe.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yep.
Get up, man. It's getting late. I got to hit the road for Bonneville tomorrow, man. World of Speed.
Yeehaw.
Yep.
All right, guys. It's been awesome. Mike Lefevers, thank you. Mike Perduto, thank you. Guys, it's been awesome.
It's been a good night. Scott, take us on out of here.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. And remember, don't forget to have your host spayed or neutered.